When you give a gift to somebody, you want to wrap it up and make it look just as beautiful as the gift that you are giving. Giving has become expensive. So if you love making junk journals and getting junk journal ideas, I've got 5 notebook ideas for you today. And I'm going to start off with this one here. I've made it up and I've wrapped it, and this is ready for gifting. I've used paper pages for my gift wrapping, and I've made little embellishments for the cover. These little notebooks are perfect. Doesn't matter whether it's Christmas time, birthday, or you just want to give a gift to a friend. We're going to start off with the easiest one first. We're going to make a notebook with 1 envelope. This one's called Thrift Shop, and it's a vintage 𝘃𝗁𝗃 scrapbook paper. It's not a thin paper and it's not cardstock, it's just a very light cardstock. So I'm going to work out how wide I want this, because I'm going to fold this twice the width of my envelope. So this is going to be my notebook cover. I'm just going to put a pencil mark there. That's how wide I'm going to cut it. I'm going to make it the same height as my envelope and cut this piece off as well. So that is the cover of my notebook, which will go there. You can leave your envelope curved at the front here, or you can cut it off so it's got a straight shape there. But what I want to do is put a disc closure on here. Now all I've got to do is cut out the pages. There's 6 papers here. You can use 7, you can use 5, you can use as many as you like. So all I've got to do now is trim this up to be the same height as this. Pop that back in for a test fit. If it differs any from your cover, you can trim that up, or you can just leave it. What I'm going to do now is put my disc closure on before I sew in my notebook. I'm going to use a 3/4 inch round circle punch, and I'm just going to cut out probably 3 of these. I'll cut 4 out so I don't have to double handle. I'm using the Barely Art glue. I'm going to make sure the glue goes out to the edge and just line up each layer perfectly. So I've ended up with 4 layers, so that all of these little layers look like one. Going to add some colour to the edge, and I'm using Vintage Photo. Now I want to find the centre of my disc. Then I'm just going to get my awl. I'm just going to gently push it through. And I've got my little brads here. These are the 𝘃𝗶𝗃𝗏 style brads. So now I've got to mark where it's going to go on my envelope here. Now your envelope paper is not very strong, so I'm going to put a little back piece on here just to make sure it doesn't tear through later. So I might put that there. I think that'll look good on the inside then. I'll just line that up there. Yep, that's close enough. Now I can go ahead and install my brad. With the prongs closed, just pierce it in, and then once it's through there, you get your little prongs and just open them up. Once you've opened them up, lay them flat, and that's it. There's your little disc in place. What we're going to then do is tie some thread around that, and we'll be able to wrap it around the journal when it's finished. I'm not going to put the thread on there now because it'll get in my road. Now we're ready to sew the pages into our notebook, and I'm going to use a embroidery floss in the colour navy blue. I think that's going to look pretty with this. So I'm going to go 3 lengths of the height of my notebook. You don't need that much, but it just makes it easier to sew and tie it off when you're finished. just to have that little bit of extra length. So you can use your needle to pierce your holes, or you can use an awl. I'm just using the 3-hole pamphlet stitch to do this, and I'm going to freehand. If you're not confident freehanding, just get some clamps and clamp them on here and on here, or here, wherever you need to. So I'm just going to put my first hole in the center, round about, and come through to the outside here. My second hole, I'm going to come just around about an inch from the top and come out there as well. My third hole, I'm coming around about an inch from the bottom and piercing out there. So I've got 3 holes in the center of my booklet. I'm going to get my needle and come from the inside to the outside and leave a tail here. Then I'm going to come up to the top from the outside and come back to the inside. Come back through to the inside, skip that middle hole, come back down to the bottom hole, back out through to the outside. Just get that tail out of the road there. So you've got a long stitch in the middle. Now we're going to come back and share this hole here. You can come through the envelope only if it's going to make it easier for you. So you don't pierce that existing thread, and then come back through to the middle. And I don't pierce my threads that way. You'll know it if you pierce your thread. You'll not be able to pull your threads at all. So I've got 2 on one side. I'm going to duck under this one, so I've got 1 thread on either side of my long stitch. I'm going to pull my needle out, and then I'm going to tension that thread going long ways up my notepad. Once I'm satisfied they're tight, I'll tie a single knot, and then I'm going to tie another knot, and I'm going to leave these threads long because I'm going to put a button on them. Then I'm going to check on the outside that those 2 stitches there are nice and tight, and that's that done there. Now if you wanted to use the matching thread, you would just pull off a little bit more of your embroidery floss, and you could tie that around there. If you put your knot there like that, that's going to give you a little bit of room under that disc. You can leave that there, and that way you can go a couple of times around your disc and keep that closed. I'll just get some buttons, and we can either put the buttons here on your closure thread or here on your binding thread. Well, after much searching, I found some navy blue buttons. I want it to be able to hang out either from the top or from the bottom. I don't want it too long because it's just going to be in the road, and I'm just going to tie it in a knot. If you've got a particular way you like to tie on buttons, just tie it your way. Now what I might do here is cut that off so I'm not confused as to which one is my tie. I've got my button dangles here. Another thing you can do here, see how this is joined here? You can change this because it's really hard to use a pocket this way. What you could do is cut this off here and seal this and make a new pocket. So this is 4 3/4 wide. Say you only want it 4 inches wide. So you wanted to cut it off here, and your little notebook was only going to be that wide. Let's do that just to show you exactly what I mean. And there's no love lost when you make alterations like this. You don't have to keep it as wide as your envelope. So I'm going to trim that all the way back to there, and I can come back another 1/4 inch if it's still too long. And I actually like that slender look of a notebook better than a wider one. So now you can see that that's happened. So we can close that there, and we can put a scoop in here and turn that into a pocket. The other alternative is that you can put a whole new pocket on there and not interfere with your cover at all. So let's grab an old book page just to give you another option. Well, I think I'm a little bit spoilt for choice. I'm not sure what to pick. I love this little magazine. It's got so many awesome pages in it. That would look beautiful with this paper. The colour suits it perfectly. Actually, that one would be nice. Use that one in there with the stain on it. Right, so I'm going to glue that down there to give it a bit of strength, and there, so that when we go in there like that, we've got a nice pocket there. Now I've got to be careful here because I don't want to put glue in there. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to add my glue to this area here. Right, so just remember, if you're going to close this up, that's how you have to think about things. So I'm not going to glue it all the way to the edge. And down she goes. That looks so good. Now to make it a pocket, I've just got to put a single bead of glue across the bottom. And that finishes that off. What I'm going to also do is just put a thumb hole there, otherwise it might not look like a pocket. Now that's definitely looking a bit more like a pocket. We can do the same, we can do a little bit of a matching pocket on the front here. What I'd done was I cut out a new piece and I folded it at the bottom and the top just to make this top of the pocket a bit stronger. And I can put a tag or, you know, a little calendar, and it's a perfect gift. So I'm just going to make a couple more. I'm just going to make this one out of the 2 envelopes. So we insert this one inside of this one. This is nothing new, using envelopes for your notebook cover. It's up to you whether you leave your notebook this wide or alter it like I did on this one here and cut it a bit narrower. Now I've got 6 pages again. The only difference between this one and this one has 1 envelope for part of the cover and this one has 2. So I've put the 2 envelopes together and that formed my cover. So I've got a pocket at the front and a pocket at the back, and I used a piece of vintage magazine to go between the cover and the pages. And then I put this large button on the front here and I just sewed it through the envelope paper. I did reinforce the back so the paper wouldn't rip easy. And then I've got the little brown buttons on the brown thread where I have sewn the signature in using the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. So that's that one there, and that button is holding the pages closed, so I don't need to tie string around this one. But I mean, you could if you wanted it to look prettier. So whatever style buttons you got would look fine on there. If you don't want to make a vintage style notebook, or the person you want to gift this to, they might like the contemporary look, you could print out something like this. And you don't always have to print out on white. Like I've got this matte white photo paper which prints out beautiful colours. But if you want to stay away from white and you don't want white on the back, use a coloured paper like this. I've got tons of it, so I could pick out any colour I wanted. This colour here, I like this. Even though it doesn't show up a lot of the design, that's the same design as this. It doesn't show it all up, but I really like it. And if I made a notebook cover out of this, I could embellish it and this would make an awesome background. And same with this one. This one's a bit heavier cardstock. So if you've only got a printer that takes a 200 GSM, just be wary of that before you go and buy any papers or pick up any from a sale. So this one looks great as well. It's a beautiful colour for this print here. So once you've got your cover printed, then you only need your paper pages. I've got 6 sheets here. I'm just going to do the same. You can make your notebook with an envelope or without. So just using the cover, you'd put the pages inside and sew them in. Or you just put the cover in the envelope with the flap showing at the front. The alternative is to put the envelope on the inside of the cover and have the flap at the front of the pages with the pocket at the back. Or turn it around, have the flap at the back and the pocket at the front of your notebook like this. And that is how I have sewn this together. I've got the flap at the back and the pocket at the front. For this one, I'm going to make it a slim notebook with no envelope. And I'm using exercise book pages that I got from my mum's stash, and this says here it's from 1983, and that was the year my son was born. So if you haven't got any tea-dyed coffee paper, just use what you have. So now I'm going to show you 2 ways to do some closures, very similar to ways that you've probably seen before, but a little bit different. Now I've gone ahead and I've put the dangles on this little notebook, and I've made them dangle so they can dangle from the bottom of the notebook or hang over the top. Now to sew on my shank button, I've put a reinforcement on the cover and one on the inside of the cover. Mark the center hole so I knew where to put the shank button, and then I've put 2 holes either side, 2 tiny little needle holes. I don't want them to be big and loose. My shank button has got a tunnel hole. I'll just go through like that, and I'm going to tie my thread to that shank. I'm just going to go in 1 hole and start securing that in place. I'm going to go through it as many times as I think it needs it. I'm going to finish off underneath the button, and that's so that that side is going to be neat and tidy. 2 loop knots. I've got some string here that I can recycle. So I need to tie that on first. The shank's big enough to deal with this. 1 knot. Go around twice, and then that's perfect. So that's the advantage of using a big shank button and making sure it's secure on your cover. I've finished this little notebook here off really easy. I've used the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. I left the tails long and tied some buttons and a bead off that. You can hang it down from the bottom or have it come over the top like that. I have made a disc and I glued that on here. Now under the disc it's got another smaller disc that raises it up a little bit, and I've used a piece of hat elastic. This hat elastic is 12 inches long, and I haven't even tied it around because it's around about roughly 1 millimeter thick. So what I've done is I put a little bit of glue here on the elastic, and a small amount because otherwise it'll make a mess, and then I just fed it under there like that, but on this top side. So that is secure in there, it's not coming out. So the disc holds it in and that little bit of glue will hold it in. So it's just sitting there now. So then, because it's a little stretchy, I come around the back and I come around the bottom this time, and I just tuck it under the disc and it just sits like that. So it's got that decorative finish there. And that's that notebook all done and finished. That is a really easy closure to do. And that is a button that I've glued on the top of the disc, and it was a shank button and I just broke the shank off. So that's another way to finish off the contemporary notebook. Just say you don't want to do the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. You don't want to sew in by hand. This one here, I've just put in a dictionary page in the front. I've recycled pages from my husband's old diary and added some exercise pages when I ran out of them. Instead of doing the 3-hole pamphlet stitch, I put my sewing machine on the longest stitch that is on my sewing machine. So I think it's around about number 5, and just sewed it straight up the spine. Then and I actually sewed it from the outside, so that looks the neatest there. I'm not too worried about the inside. And it's just laying flat. It doesn't even need a closure. And this one's ready to gift as well, or embellish however you like. I grabbed 2 pages out of the phone book. I picked the biggest phone book I had. I just used glue dots so you don't see any sticky tape, and tied a piece of string with a tag on it. Easy peasy. This one is a really old book page. It's so old it even started falling apart, but I really wanted to use it because it looked so good. I used green twine and just pushed a flower and a leaf behind the twine. This one here is an index out of a very large atlas book. I coffee dyed it and the paper is really strong. Tied a piece of string around it and made a little flower embellishment to glue on top of the string. And don't forget, these are not only for birthdays, they make great Christmas gifts. Okay, just a recap. This one's the single envelope notebook with a disc closure and blank pages with the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. This one is the double envelopes, so the envelopes made the cover, and that's also the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. There is no closure on this one. The button just holds the front page closed. This one is a printable on a beautiful old piece of cardstock, and it's got a shank button, and the envelope is on the inside rather than the outside. This one is just a slimline notebook with a hat elastic for the closure, and it's also been hand sewn with the 3-hole pamphlet stitch. And I've done one extra just to remind you that you can use your sewing machine. These are blank papers from my husband's old diary, and I've just opened it up to the center and done a straight stitch right down the spine. These are such a handy little notebook to gift at any time of the year. It can be Christmas, it can be birthday, it can be just something if you're meeting up for someone. You can put it in with your happy mail. There doesn't have to be a reason to give. And just to finish off the video, I'm going to wrap these up. All of these old book pages look amazing for wrapping paper.